Do you believe you have a divine purpose?
We will be exploring how being healthy helps us live out our divine purpose with excellence.
Join us on the Healthy for My Purpose podcast, where we'll help you lose weight, lower your A1C, your blood pressure, and even your cholesterol.
We'll inspire you and give you tangible tools to help you take action to improve your health.
And we'll challenge you to see the powerful connection between plant-based nutrition, your body, and your faith.
After all, God has a purpose for you, but He needs you healthy. Yeah, so we are going to have a wonderful discussion. Hey, Danette, how are you?
How are you? I'm fantastic. Thank you.
Good. Awesome. I was just informing the audience that we were going to just have a candid conversation about Black women's health, body image, the importance of kind of just developing a God-centered self-image and chronic health issues that we're facing, and just you know, just keeping it real on how we could really take charge of our health and what are some of the barriers that we have when it comes to, you know, societal norms, our image, and things that are holding us back. But before we start, I'm so excited to have you. Can you just introduce yourself to the audience? Just tell us a little bit about yourself, just so they can get to know you.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, this is my first Instagram Live, so I'm really excited. So,
you came on like a boss girl, no hitches, nothing. You just came on. And most people was like, I'm trying to get on.
What are we doing? Yeah, no, I checked in with my husband first, like, how do you do this? He was like, just, whatever. So,
yeah.
But my name is Danette, Danette Batiste, and I am the CEO and Executive Director of Healthy Heart Nation, which is our nonprofit, which you and your partner are ambassadors for our organization.
Yeah.
And so Healthy Heart Nation is really about eliminating disparities in the African American community and just doing what we can in terms of what we've learned, like to each one teach one, as well as to bring that level of professional expertise to the way that our community learns best, and we learn best through conversations. So similar to what you and Gigi do also, in terms of just being able to have that conversation, right? Like our history, goes back to the griot, and in terms of just telling stories and sharing stories, because there's so much learning that comes from sharing. Yeah. And so what we've done is we've kind of identified 4 pillars in the community: health, justice, education, as well as business. And so we initially felt like in a lot of instances, we've been having those conversations, but we haven't been having them as a collective. We've had them individually. So health people are talking to health people, justice people are talking to justice people, business people are talking to business people, and education people are talking to education people. Yeah. And so what we wanted to do was to have the conversation really centered around each of these areas and how the various topics that we deal with affect each of those areas, because we felt that, you can't solve it, as a silo. You can't solve it that way. And so the strength is in numbers, and the strength is in collectively, looking to have the conversations, to develop the solutions, and then through those solutions to have the actions that are going to be necessary to really move our community forward in a positive way. We can't wait for anybody else to do it for us. It's up to us to do it. And so we have the expertise. We have it in our community. Why aren't we using it? Why aren't we using our voices? Why aren't we using it to connect to people who look like us, who have similar experiences? Yeah. So that's what Healthy Heart Nation is about. And then we also have the pillar of community-based initiatives, which we call CBI. And so the CBI is the top of our table, and the business, justice, education, and health are the pillars, the legs to the table. And so we feel like if we are able to put our community on top of that table through the community-based initiatives, using those 4 pillars, we can move it forward to making sure that the future looks better than our past.
Wow, that's amazing. And I love that you said that, you know, everyone's talking in their own corners and it's about kind of immersing the conversation, because even what we're talking about today, when you're talking about Black women's health, you're talking about a mother, you're talking about someone who works in the community, you're talking about someone who's contributing in business, you're talking about leaders. A woman's life is really trickling in so many areas of society that having those conversations, like you said, from different perspectives and, you know, can broaden the awareness in such a different manner, because
Yes.
you might be a woman that really hears it because now it's affecting your job and they're talking about it from a business perspective, or you might be someone where you're hearing it from the pulpit because you're very spiritual. Like it there's so many places to hear it, and sometimes we feel
Yes.
like if we box it into the medical, but Black women, women are so diverse that hearing the message from different areas, I think is really powerful. So
Yeah.
I'm excited
Yeah.
about what you guys are doing.
What we're doing, you're in
Yes,
this with us.
yes, yes.
What we are
So,
doing together.
so what we decided that we were gonna talk about today, I think a lot of times when we're talking about Black women's health, I know a lot of times we have these statistics that come out, you know, the rate of obesity, chronic health issues, but I wanted to peel it back a little bit and kind of just get into what are some of the issues that we're struggling with that even affect us from even taking that first step. We're always in that struggle mode. And I know, like, you know, body image is a big deal. And I think it could go, sometimes it could go even both ways. It could be society's body image, which is constantly changing. Because I know as a Black woman, I think the body has changed like about 10 times since I was a kid growing up. And it's like, maybe you matched it when, you know, back when you were like 20, and then now you don't. And so there's this constant struggle, especially now that we're really getting into a lot of things where it's, you know, the implant, like there's a lot of stuff going on with Instagram and what our daughters and young people are facing. We didn't have to face that. We were watching magazines and TV, but the whole dynamic of IG and Instagram and what's out there now is like unimaginable for the young person who's growing up now. So
Exactly. I think, you know, in conversations that I've had, I'm so grateful that I am not growing up in that time. And this time, you know, our time was a little bit different, and we did have, you know, I think that, you know, when you grow up, you do have the body image issues, right? But like you said, it's evolved, right? So when I was growing up, I was very tall and lanky and skinny, right? And so at that point in time in elementary, you know, literally, like, I was not, like, the guys weren't trying to check for me. They're like, go, you know, move, go get, you know, they want to fill up somebody who has something that they could feel, right? So, you know, literally it wasn't, you know, it was just kind of move along, skinny girl, right? And then, so then you know, you grow up and you get older and you start to develop, you know, and, you know, but like you said, there's like this window, like, where you just kind of hit that right, you know, right here, and then you go the other way, and you feel like, okay, I'm gaining way too much weight, and you know, I want to be thinner, and so you, like you said, like the Instagram and those things do shape that body perception, you know, and so I do think that we as women are really hard on ourselves, you know, and so, you know, like you look back on pictures and where you thought, oh, I was too fat or I was too this, and you felt like you couldn't really enjoy yourself. But when you look back on the pictures, you're like, what was I tripping about? I look good in this moment.
It's like you
but
never appreciate the moment that you're
never
actually
appreciate it.
in. One
You
second,
never
Danette, one
appreciate
second.
it. Okay, no problem.
Yeah, double duty here. My daughter's laughing her head off, and I'm like, I'm on a live, you know. But anyhow,
so it does become challenging, right? So, you know, it is a situation where you're trying to train your mind. So, but even as adults, like, you know, I'm 50, and it's like, hold on, this shouldn't be affecting me. But as you're seeing these different images that come through, and even when you get the realities of like it's photoshopped, or the
Yeah.
person, they have these
The
apps that can
filters. Yeah.
make filters that can make
Yeah.
your waist smaller and your hips bigger, and all of these things. We're still kind of striving and trying
Yeah.
to attain a certain level of beauty that
Yeah.
really, in some instances, it doesn't even exist.
Exactly.
And so, it's very challenging, especially for younger people. But at the same token, as a grown woman, I'm still
Mhm.
affected by those images as well.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Because I think beauty for women in general, it's something that is instilled in us from we're small, that women are striving for these things. I mean, it really, it's something that can't evade us. And so when it comes to women's health, I think because of those issues that we struggle with within, I think sometimes it could become a barrier in actually getting healthy, because the image that you see yourself, sometimes, it's allowing ourselves to really get sucked into sometimes fad diets, and that's a whole nother thing where you're trying to get to a size and you're not trying to get to healthy. And I remember there was a slogan that came out saying that healthy was the new sexy. I don't know if that caught on or not, but that was a slogan that got thrown out there for a second there.
Right.
But I think what happens is we start chasing, and I know I've done this, I'm chasing dress sizes, or I'm chasing fitting, getting ready for a wedding, or getting ready for a reunion, and
those moments.
Getting and getting to a healthy size is not even about my blood pressure. It's not about the fact that, maybe I was just diagnosed with diabetes, or maybe, obesity causes so many other health concerns. That is not really a lot of times what we're paying attention to, because we're so bombarded by all the messages that it's more about those other things. And I think it takes a relearning now to kind of say, I mean, it's not to say that you're never going to really kind of be affected by those things, but how do we dig deeper as women and say we have to take charge of our health from a different perspective that is going to be a lot more foundational and more solid? Because I find when it's for a wedding, once that wedding is over, I don't know if you've ever done fat diets, or you got to the size, you got to the wedding, and then when the wedding's over, you just creep back to your regular life.
Forget when the wedding's over. Like that day, you're like,
that day,
where's the bread?
You actually indulge on the wedding day. And so the why is too weak. And so one of the things we talk about at the Daniel Fassett Bridge to Healthy Living is really digging deeper for a deeper why, especially when it comes to our health, because that's going to be the kind of why that's going to allow you to say, well, I'm on medications, I got to change the way I eat, I got to incorporate exercise, I got to, we don't even want to get into this part, which is, I got to run even if it's going to mess up my hair too, because that's another thing. It's the hair politics for Black women. I've been there, where it's like, you come from the hairdresser, you got to exercise in the morning. You're just like, I don't know if I can. I don't want to mess up the fresh hair. You know what I mean? And so there's always this thing. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, we've all been there, and I'm speaking for we all, but I'm pretty sure based on my independent research, we've all been there. And, you put your body through so much, right? And, even in just reading the statistics, when it talks about like the different fad diets, like even if you do lose the weight, your body is like, you've shocked your body into, to the point where when you do eat that piece of bread like at the wedding, after you've lost the 15 pounds, like in most instances, whenever I've done any kind of diet, by the time when I come off, I get on the scale and it's worse than when I started. Right. And so in terms of like the why, I mean, I'm always trying to strive for something that is sustainable, because, at the end of the day, just that fad is really, it has not worked. And so each time, I've lost the 18 pounds, or I've lost this, or I've lost that. Like you find it, and they bring friends. Like the pounds bring friends to the party. Like, okay, she's tripping. So, you end up gaining so much more. And so, and I know that this is kind of part of what you guys from the Daniel Fast standpoint is, it's just really trying to find what works, for your body. And
Yeah.
we know that, plant-based
Yeah.
eating and
Yeah.
living is going to work over time. It is
Yes.
not going to shock the body. If you
Right.
start giving the body good food and good nutrients, then the body will reward you for it, right? But it's just so hard when you're out and about and you go to the restaurants, or we're so socialized with
Yeah.
food,
Yeah.
right? And so it's almost like, hey, take this piece of cake, or,
Yeah.
you're going to have this and that. And we all have our weaknesses. Mine is macaroni and cheese. But,
Yeah.
like during those holidays, when those
Yeah.
things show up,
Yeah.
you're just like, oh, let me just do it this one time and I'll
Yeah.
get back on, on
Yeah.
Wednesday, or, Saturday, or whatever the
Yeah.
case would be. So it's very challenging, but like you said, the why is the most important. And if you are doing it for your health, then
Mm-hmm.
it's not about the dress size. It's not
Yeah.
about the event. It's not
Yeah.
about that moment, but
Yeah.
your life moment.
Right.
Like your life becomes that moment. And
Right.
so when you're able to reach there, and I'm still
Yeah.
striving to get there.
Yeah.
I'm not there yet. I'm not,
Yeah.
delivered to that point yet, but
Yeah.
just realizing that life should be our moment. And if that's the case, then that's all the time.
Yes. And one of the other things that, comes out in this too is that it's also the because we're kind of juggling two things. It's like this relationship that we have with food is so complicated,
Mm-hmm.
because on one hand, we're, like you said, we have our certain types of foods that bring us comfort or bring us
Yes.
joy, or when we go out, sometimes it's hard to say, well, we have to go out to eat or we have to celebrate around food.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's hard to kind of break that. And so,
Yeah.
even just developing, new patterns around that is also a way to deal with it. Because I think, when we're talking about Black women's health specifically, if we're dealing with high blood pressure, if we're dealing with
Mm-hmm.
obesity, if we're dealing with diabetes, um, how could we incorporate more of a self-care? Because I always say this idea that taking care of your health is
Mm-hmm.
the highest self-care that you can do.
Absolutely.
And so a lot of times we might be, taking care of the kids, or,
Mm-hmm.
working a high profile job, or
Right.
doing whatever the multitasking that women do, and their
Mm-hmm.
health might be left for last.
Right.
And so one of the things we try to promote to women is your health really has to be first, because if
Yes.
you're not actually taking care of the car that's driving everyone everywhere, and it breaks
Mm-hmm.
down, then no one's getting anywhere, including yourself. And so,
Exactly.
but a lot of times we have this nature of being givers and not really
Mm-hmm.
understanding that giving to ourselves is just as important,
Yeah. And
Yeah.
how we give to ourselves, right? Because, even in those moments with the stress eating, right? You're
Yeah.
just like, oh my gosh, like I was supposed to be on a diet, but I'm so stressed out. I just
Yeah.
need to eat this thing real quick, because
Yeah.
it gives you that immediate, immediate feeling of, of comfort or joy. And so, just recently, one of our friends, Dr. Eric Walsh, was just basically mentioning the fact that exercise is
Mm.
really, it's underrated in terms of its effects on the body, and how it can really kind of turn around your emotions.
Mm.
If you're able to just, get on a treadmill or go take a walk, whether it's outside or,
Yeah.
getting that sunlight or whatever the case would be, like those little things, we just overlook them because we want that quick answer. But
Right.
that doesn't cost you any money to go
Right.
outside and, take a
Right.
walk, or to sit outside and get some sunlight, to be able to to think and reflect and have that level of mindfulness around your health. you
Yes.
know I mean, it might be easier to walk to the refrigerator and open it up
Yeah.
and get something unhealthy. But in
Yes.
the same token, maybe, it could be relieved by just taking a walk,
Yes.
or just getting out and just doing something for a little bit of time. And so just make, you say, oh, I don't have the time for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you, like, in terms of making the time
Right.
for your health is really important. And so, um, you know, we just have to socialize it a little bit more.
Right.
And we have to be able to continue to talk to each other and support one another. That it is not easy,
Mm-hmm.
however, it's worth it, right? And so, like, we have to really put the onus on ourselves to,
Right.
that's something we can control, right? We can't
Mm-hmm.
control how we may be treated in the hospital or, in all of these different areas. But
Yeah.
when possible, we may be able to control, the decisions that we make in terms of what we put into our bodies.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's, it sounds easy. Oh, it's just a choice, but it can be very challenging to make the right choice in those moments. But it starts with being aware and
Mm-hmm.
being mindful that you have a choice.
Yes. Yes. And the irony is that we make these choices every day is another opportunity. So if you messed up at dinner, you could start again. So
Yes,
that choice
yes.
is always going to be presented. You're never going to run out of breakfast, lunch, and dinner, at least not in North America anyway. We're always
Exactly.
going to have that option. And
Mm-hmm.
so one of the things is really that we talk a lot about is really digging into your purpose, and this is what we call developing a God-centered self-image,
Mm-hmm.
because everybody has a purpose, whether you're a mom, whether you're a
Mm-hmm.
dentist, whether you're the vice president of the United States, whether you're
Sure.
a grandmother, everyone
Mm-hmm.
has a purpose that they
Yes.
feel they want to fulfill. And
Mm-hmm.
so one of the things we talk about in terms of getting healthy is
Mm-hmm.
tapping into that purpose, because it's
Right.
really tied to your health.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're really tapped in where it's like, you know what, my health is tied to my purpose, then
Mm-hmm.
it opens up the window, I think, for Black women to start looking at their health in a different way. Because now it's like,
Absolutely.
if my health is tied to my purpose, I'm so purpose driven, then I
Yes.
have to face and deal with my health, because it's the vehicle that's going
Absolutely.
to get me to where I'm going to go. It's the vehicle that's going to allow me to see my grandkids when I'm 60. It's the vehicle
Absolutely.
allow me to show up with my best self. Because I think
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times what we don't realize once we change our eating, and this is what happened for me, is
Okay.
that you didn't realize you weren't showing up with your best self. You thought
Mm-hmm.
50% was high level. And then when
Right.
you changed your eating and your exercising, and you got this mental and spiritual clarity, and your
Mm-hmm.
energy levels and your body was just in total alignment, then all of a sudden you realize, wow, this is what 80 looks like. This is what 70 looks
Yeah.
like. But if you don't have anything to compare it to, you have
Sure.
no idea you're shortcutting yourself. And
Right.
so
Right.
I think for women, it's
Mm-hmm.
really, if we could really just kind of say, how do we get past, like we talked about, the IG and the culture,
Mm-hmm.
and really just get more inward. You know what I mean? Where we're like, why am I here? What is my
Okay.
purpose? And how can food, how can
Mm-hmm.
everything else facilitate that? Could be an
Yeah.
answer. Hmm.
And I think that it does require that you pull back,
Right.
right? I don't think you can get there if you're still looking at the things that are distracting you in the first place.
Hmm.
And so, even with your ability to manage what you put in your mouth, like, we have to
Hmm.
also manage what we put in our minds.
Yes.
And and so we're so used to checking, these mediums for whatever, for
Yeah.
whatever reason.
Validation. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, so we just almost have to fast from, from social media at times, right?
Hmm.
Realizing, that maybe it's not giving me what I need in
Hmm.
these moments, or being very selective in terms of what you see and what you intake
Right.
into your mindset. Like, a lot of times I don't watch, and I don't know if this is good or bad, but a lot of times I don't watch a lot of news,
Yeah.
because the you don't want to hear
Negativity.
the bad news and the negativity, and you want to stay positive. But
Hmm.
there is still a requirement to be aware of what's going on, right? So you have to kind of manage it, in terms of what you can get and when you need to turn it off and tune it out,
Right.
for your mental health.
Mm.
And so you want to feed your mind good things, right? So, there's good podcasts, there's good information that
Yes.
you can take, in, that's going to really enhance what you're trying to do. And so one of the other things for me that helps me out a lot is when I'm having a bad day, or I'm having, my mood isn't what it needs to be. Like for me, it's really as easy as just listening to happy songs, as I call them, right? There's just certain songs that for me, when I put them on, like if I'm listening to September or, anything like Earth, Wind and Fire or something like that, it's really hard to, the beats are really, they bring me up from a mood standpoint, right? And so you've got to figure out what it is that works for you, and you have to make time for those things. I also enjoy taking long baths, like I'm talking about hours, but it can only really happen late at night when everyone else is asleep, where you can just really just have that peace, that quiet, that solitude to really hear like what's going on in your head, to really hear God speaking to you, to get aligned and attuned to what the purpose is. Because a lot of times people say, oh, find your purpose, but it's not always that easy finding it. Like, I would say it took me a long time to find what that purpose was. And even though I was always, serving and always, doing different things, it didn't happen overnight. And people, they're like, well, what did you want to do when you grew up? Like, I wanted to do public relations and communications. But you get out and you get a job. And so in those jobs, I found purpose in whatever I was doing. So you go back to whatever your hand, hand does, do it to the best of your abilities. And so, you get blessed in doing, right? So, you don't want people to just sit around and wait for this purpose to like land on your lap.
Right. It doesn't always happen that way.
It doesn't always happen like that. So
that is so true. And this is why I think for our health journey, it's more than the food. That's what I hear you saying, and I think that's really great. Like, it's more than the food, because it's what value do you place on yourself? What value do you place on your values, right? Like the things that are important to you. And so that's what it is, probably on the deepest level. It's a real reflection of how you see yourself. Because if you're not willing, and this is not consciously, this is just after you peel back the layers, of course, we all struggle with this. But it's like, I have to say to myself, if I'm willing to eat something, if I'm willing to continue to do something that's destroying me, then I have to be able to ask myself, what is going on here? And I think sometimes we're such in a zombie mode, like you're saying, like we're almost just eating and just doing, and we're not stopping, like you said, to take those moments where you can reflect and say, what's going on here? What's happening? Because my blood pressure is high. Whatever's going on in my body, I know that I'm not where I should be health wise, but I can't take the time to figure it out, or I won't stop to figure it out. And so that's where I think a lot of times as women, we have to get to that place to be honest and to kind of peel that away. And it's tough answers, because sometimes what I had to figure out was food was just an idol in my life. It was too much of an issue. It was too strong of an issue. And I didn't realize it. You're just thinking, this is just food. Like, it can't be that serious. But when you start to try to peel it away, you realize, wait a minute, food can become an idol in your life, where it's like, you can't do this without it. You won't give that up for it. That's kind of an idol, and until you have to pull it away, you don't realize it, because you're just going through the motions. But ask yourself, if the doctor says, I have this, don't eat these foods, and you find that you can't, then there's a question that has to be asked. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's like, it's a drug, right? It's definitely a drug for most people, but it's so easy to get a hold to. Right?
Oh, yeah.
So, it's just right there.
That's why it's hard.
Everywhere. It's so hard, and so it is like really a conscious effort, and it does require the mindfulness, and it does require, like you're saying, you've got to know what your why
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
And that why has to be sustainable,
Mm-hmm.
because, as women, we're going 100 miles an hour
Exactly.
at all times, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of it is us based on the fact that we're exhausted. Like,
Yeah.
we're literally so
Mm-hmm.
tired,
Yes.
right? And so, like, if you're up late, and even it's almost to a certain extent, like, because my husband, he goes to sleep really early, and we, like, we laugh at him, like, oh, you're going to sleep. But the
Yeah.
longer you stay up, the hungrier you get,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so, so it's really important that we get sleep as
Sleep.
well, right? Sleep
Yeah.
is it's so important in terms of, like, giving our bodies the opportunity to recover and to
Yes.
recuperate,
Mhm.
and to stop us from eating. Like,
Yes.
literally,
Yes. To
like,
shut the
during that.
kitchen off at a certain time.
Exactly,
That could be a whole
exactly.
ID right there, because it's like,
Hmm.
I feel like we're in a culture that we're always eating.
Yes.
Like, it could be 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock. Like, there's no stopping. And
Hmm.
so when we have a hard time restricting our window of eating, because food is something that
Absolutely.
just is, and I don't remember this as, I think the older I got, the more that
Hmm.
window just broadened. Because I just remember when I was
Yes.
really, really small, kitchen closed at a certain time. But
That's it.
as the years went on, it's like the kitchen was a 24-hour Walmart. Like, it's like things
Right.
become 24 hours now. Whereas back in the
Yes.
day, they didn't even have refrigerators and these type of things to even hold the food on that level. But now, with all the
Right.
technology, it could be good and bad, because now we can access any type of food at any moment and any time.
Yes. Yes.
And so here we are in this twilight zone, basically, for
Yeah.
the
Like, right.
body,
Right. Like, for
trying
us,
to figure it out.
when we were growing up, once they put that dish rag over the, in the
Yes, it's
sink, like, right
done.
over that middle part,
It is
like,
done.
that's it. Like, no, it was
you
like,
know
hey, the dishes are clean. They dried down the sink.
yes.
Everything was done, and that dish rag came over there. It's like, done. Nobody eats
Nobody went in. The
anything.
thought didn't even cross
No.
your mind to
Right.
eat anything at
Right.
11 o'clock at night. And so
Exactly.
culturally, we're in a very perilous time. And I think
Yes.
this is why it's so much more difficult for people to master the food, because
Mm-hmm.
we're bombarded with so much access, even in our own homes.
Yes.
You don't even have to be at the
Yes.
store. Somebody
Yes.
says something. Song Sep says, "Blessing, ladies. Have a great evening. God keep you as you strive for him more." Okay. Thank you, Song Step. And so it, it's all the more reason
Yeah.
why we have to dance to the beat of our own drum. It has to come from
Yes.
a different place. It has to come,
Mm-hmm.
as we say, from a God-centered self-image, because
Yes.
if not, you're going to be thrown to and fro,
Mm-hmm.
like,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to be eaten alive, because there's just
It's
so many things working against us. And if
right.
we're not saying, if we don't have our health aligned with our values, which is, this is
Mm-hmm.
what I stand for, this is who I am, and somehow the health
Mm-hmm.
is a part of that,
Right.
it's going to even be more difficult.
Right. And like you said, it's not if, it's when,
But
right?
yeah, yeah,
So that moment is coming. You just have to try to be ready for it.
exactly.
And also, you have to be willing to forgive yourself for
Yeah,
those times when you don't, maybe you don't make the right decision, or
yeah,
you don't act out the way that that you should have. But in those moments, you have to be willing to forgive yourself, and you have to, like you said, be willing to make the next meal or the
right.
next moment better.
Better.
But a lot of times we get caught up in the guilt,
Beat
we get
ourselves
caught up
up.
in the
Yeah.
shame, we
Mhm.
get caught up in, well, I don't deserve it. I messed
Yes,
up this time. I might
yeah.
as well just eat the
Just,
whole pizza
yes.
now, right?
Yep.
I've
Oh, well, it's
already
too late. There's
broken the
no point in
diet, right?
continuing. And it was just one
Mhm.
mistake. And so, yeah,
Right,
yeah, we have
right.
to give ourselves grace.
Yes.
And we have to understand that it's a work in progress.
Hmm.
It's something that's, you're going to slip up. But the question is, it's about recovering faster.
Yes.
Rather than, like you said, digging yourself deeper when you slip.
Hmm.
It's about being
Hmm.
able to say, I'm giving myself some grace so that you can recover faster and just keep it moving, and
Right.
not stuck. I think that's the main.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
using our community as a support system.
Yes, yes,
And so, like, my husband, the Healthy Heart Doc,
yeah,
he provides a lot of different um, mechanisms, and even just in terms of just different steps that people can take to
Yes.
make a difference, to lower their blood pressure,
Yeah.
to lose the weight, because
Yeah.
again, a lot of times that is what we are focused on,
Yes.
but it's more of a byproduct,
Right.
versus like the main reason behind it. And so, but it really, everybody has to be ready
Mm.
to do it, because it does become hard. So for you, like,
Mhm.
has it become easier? Does it become
It
easier? And when does that happen?
becomes easier when you kind of make the shift, because what happens
Okay.
is in the beginning, you're retraining your palate, you're retraining
Okay.
your mindset, you're retraining
Mm.
beliefs. But there
Okay.
comes a point where you kind of cross over. And so now
Okay.
what was seemed as like, oh, now I don't care for that. Now that
Hmm.
becomes what you crave. But it takes
Okay.
time for you, but you have to see it through, because you could, once you
Okay.
start eating, your body's going to play tricks on you to say, well,
Mm.
this food is not as good as this food in the
Okay.
beginning. But as you continue, your palate adjusts, and then all
Hmm.
of a sudden your body starts to crave the good
The
food,
good stuff.
because this is
Oh
what it's
wow.
been waiting
Okay.
for. You know what I
Okay.
mean? It's like,
Yeah.
aha, you finally got it, because your body's designed to want these nutrients that you're feeding it.
Okay.
And
Yes.
so once you cross over that, but what happens is you have to stay the course, even if it feels
Mm.
difficult. I think that is what it
Okay.
is. I think a lot of times when it becomes difficult or you feel resistance is you give
Hmm.
up. But if you
Hmm.
stay the course, something magically happens where you
Mm.
switch. And then all of a sudden, what was hard becomes easy,
Okay.
because now it becomes your second nature. So
Okay.
it's one of those things that I tell people all the time. You
Hmm.
have to start, and you
Hmm.
don't want to give up, because right when you're about to give up is probably when you're about to
Breakthrough.
get the breakthrough. You know what I
Okay.
mean?
Okay.
And so
Okay.
this is why when we do the Daniel fast, we try to
Hmm.
have people do this where they remove all toxic foods from their diet. Because what
Mm.
happens is when you get to be where nothing is involved, it gives you a faster time to get there. Because what
Hmm.
happens is, you know how it is when you eat good for 3 days and then you go back to the other, you're competing, you're always competing, and you never really know what it feels like to just have nothing in your body that's toxic for a period of time.
Mm.
And so you don't
Right.
really get to feel what it feels like, because that is what's going to be your sustainability. Because now you're
Okay.
going to be like, I felt so great. So then now when
Hmm.
you're posed with something that you know will offset that, you're like, you have something to compare it to. But
Okay.
when you don't, you're always, you never really know, because you're just eating for 2 days like this, and then you're trying this. So that's
Yeah.
why this idea of eating healthy on the weekends but not on the week, it doesn't work, because you're always going to be
Right.
rat race trying to figure it out, because your palate can never have
Mm.
time to reset. So
So the cheat days aren't
the
helping
cheat days
anybody.
are actually helping to set you back, because the minute your
Okay.
palate is getting there, you're like, okay, I got a
Hmm.
cheat day. Okay, we're back to square one. And
And
it's like Groundhog Day. Cheat
yes.
days are like Groundhog Day. It resets you to start. And so that's why we say just give it up for 4 weeks, so that you could get that full experience. Yeah.
And that's 4 weeks.
Yeah,
Yes.
4 weeks. Yes. 4 weeks.
Yeah. It
And,
is.
and
And
sometimes
like
it
you
even
said, it
takes
is
longer
hard
than that, to be honest, to be fully
to get
integrated, because the
reset.
palate,
Okay.
when you really think about all the foods we're eating, like foods that are high in salt and sugar
Hmm.
and high fructose corn systems, our palates have been hijacked. So it's going to take
Mm.
time to bring back natural flavors, feeling like, wow, this tastes great, because we're so used to that
Okay.
hyper palatate foods that we're used to, so.
So do you think that maybe sometimes people self-sabotage for fear of failure? Do you think that that is a part of it? Like they don't really want to go in and see the results and then have to, you know, live like this the whole time?
Yeah, I think it's a fear of failure sometimes, but I think it's the fear of the unknown. Because
Mm.
if they really believe that I was going to feel 100, most people would do it. But I think it's the fear of the unknown. Like you don't really think that's going to happen, because how could you
Okay.
do this? So I think a lot
Hmm.
of people, they're actually pleasantly surprised. Like I remember when I first started, I thought, all right, well, I guess my life is over. I'm just going to, you know what I mean? You kind of like
Can't go
turn in the
anywhere.
towel, thinking it's over. but I gotta do what I gotta do. You know, it's like an old, it's like some kind of.
You're like, bye everybody.
Yeah, bye everyone. I can't eat the good food anymore. But then you're so surprisingly, like it's such a surprise when you get over to the other side. You're like, wait a minute, I'm actually eating better now than I've eaten before. And so it's a pleasant surprise that you were not expecting. And there's no way that you could coach somebody to do that. And so this is why you have to just go in there thinking, I'm going after my purpose. I'm not going after a meal. And when you do that, you'll come out with your purpose and you'll come out with some excellent meals at the same time. But you may not know that going in. So.
And most of the time when the whys happen for people, it's a drastic situation, right? Like they've got the stage 4 cancer, or you know, they've got the diabetes, or they've got these things that are kind of forcing them into the situation. And so it's about really getting people to make the choice before they have to.
Yes. Okay. But you know how it is in life sometimes, you know, it's harder to tell somebody when they're not in a situation. Sometimes you find that. But that's what awareness is, because I think the more we talk about this in our community, I think like you were talking about it in the beginning, is the more that maybe we will have some people say, you know what, I don't want to get into that head-on collision. I'm going to do that. And so that's the hope, that you'll be able to save a lot of people from having to even get to that point. And then the people who are at that point, you'll help them to give them the skills that it needs to take the action that they need in that moment. Because they can't wait. You know, they can't wait too long. They got to take action right now. So. Right.
And so are you finding that it is easier because for younger people to kind of adapt this step in terms of like earlier, because like my daughter, she's like 17, and you know, she'll say, oh, you know, she'll get on these fads. But you're saying that, like, you know, in terms of the healthy eating, make the healthy eating the fad.
Exactly. I think this younger generation to me is kind of mixed, because they seem like they're more health conscious than we ever were, and it could, again, it's just information that's out there. But if healthy eating should be a way of life. And that obviously that is the hope. And I think by targeting women, we are the gatekeepers of our families. And so that's another way that we could influence our children and influence our grandchildren and create a new legacy of health. Because a lot of times what you'll find is that grandmother had high blood pressure, so does daughter. And then, you know, and it kind of goes on. But by making that change as a woman in your own household, what you're doing now is showing a different way to your children. And if you're older, to your grandchildren, and you're creating a new legacy of health for your lineage, which is
that whole
awesome.
That whole I'd rather see a sermon than hear one any day kind of you know, and I think it really is about finding the true why that isn't situational, you know, like to be able to find that. And I think, you know, we were talking at one point in time, just in our pre-talks, was just in terms of like really handing it over to God, you know, because I am like, I struggle with it constantly, you know, and, you know, there was a couple of days, maybe last week or a couple of weeks ago, where I was just like, Lord, please don't let me put anything bad in my mouth today. Like, help me to stay on the straight and narrow today. And I can honestly say, like, that day I did, you know, but like the next day it was just like, oh, you know, wait a minute, you know. So you know, I definitely believe that, you know, and as far as God answering our prayers, you know, if you do give it to him, he will help you. You know, so I have seen him help me when I've given it to him. And then, you know, there are those days where I, you know, choose not to, and the outcomes aren't the same.
Exactly.
So like, what have you found in those moments?
Yeah, for sure. I think most times, and I'll, you know, and this is part of what Gigi and I are, you know, shouting from the mountaintop, is that a lot of times when it comes to our health, we don't even think to invite God into our health journey. It's not even a thing. You're just struggling it out, looking up diets, you know, doing this, doing that. And we know how to pray for if something goes wrong. That's not what I'm saying. Oh, you know, Lord, heal me of this or heal me of that. But we have missed an opportunity to invite God into those more intimate spaces where it's like you said, God, I'm struggling to eat this cake. God, I'm finding that I'm turning to food and I'm not turning to you. I'm using food to comfort me and not, or whatever those spaces are that really has us hooked. We don't really think to invite God into that. And so this is one of the things that we talk about when it comes to our health is when you invite God into that space, something is a breakthrough happens, because now you're not just not trying to eat the food out of your own strength, but you're pulling on God's strength in those moments, and you're seeing a bigger picture. You're thinking, well, you know what? I am a royal priesthood. My body is the temple of God. So what I'm putting in is carrying or housing my divine purpose. And so now you see your food and how you eat and all of these things. You know, we talked about this one thing about this whole idea of, is what I'm eating worthy to say grace? You know, because when you think about it, you be praying over some foods like, Lord, bless this food, and the food that you're eating is contributing to your death. And so you say to but if you're conscious enough to say, God, is what I'm eating worthy of grace? It allows you every moment, because you're even inviting God into that space. We all say grace. You invite him in a different way into that grace. Then every meal you have a time to reflect and say, is this plate going to reflect my values on many levels, not just how it's going to hurt my body, but how did it get to my plate, and who did it hurt to get here, and how did all of the dynamics, or how is it, you know, all of those values are piled onto that plate, and you have a moment of reflection in that minute to do it. And so there's so many ways to kind of do that. But I think it's first understanding that God wants us healthy. That's his best standard. Simple. Like we think, oh, it doesn't matter. No, he wants you healthy. You know what I mean? When you really believe that on a soul level, then you start to think, well, this is something that I got to strive for. Because a lot of times we don't even think about it as something to even do. We're focusing on other things, which is great, but we miss that. And that's the one thing that can take us out from doing everything else that God has called us to do. So.
And so do you think we kind of just rely too much on ourselves to do it? Like we don't like put that full reliance on him?
I think we do, not because we want to. I think we're just not used to bringing God in that space. I think we're thinking eating food is carnal in a way. Like it's you know what I mean? It's not spiritual. But I always say that your eating healthy is a spiritual practice, because what you're doing is you're saying, I'm putting things in my body that honor the temple that God is living in. That's a spiritual practice. It's like if you think about the actual physical temple, the things that people do to adorn it, that's a spiritual thing. So what are we doing to our own bodies? That's a spiritual practice too. So
and I love what you said about the grace. Like I wouldn't dare, you know, eat anything without saying grace, even if it's over some, you know, some French fries. You know, look, bless the food. God is great. God is great. You know, like you're saying it real fast. You know, in terms of, because we were taught that whatever we're eating is a blessing that we receive from him. But you know, in terms of just trying to turn that around. Is what we're eating a blessing to him?
And it allows you to every time be able to ask yourself that question. And so for me, not that I eat perfectly, because I don't, but if I don't, that question pops in my brain. So at least I'm aware of it now. Whereas before I would just mindlessly, I never made the connection. I would never make the connection. And so now, because I made that connection, I'm seeking ways to better my health as a spiritual practice. So now it's easier to do, because now I've integrated that into how I carry out my faith. And so that is what I think for women of faith, for them, is when you integrate that into your portfolio, it becomes easier, just like every other decision. Like you think about it, when you have a crisis in life, when you invite God in that space, you get through it easier, right? When anything we do and we put God in it, it's going to be easier. So why not bring him into our health journey?
So beyond just God is great, God is good, and God is good, right? So just more so than that. So how do you get over the guilt that you might feel? Like, how do you give yourself the grace? You know, like the guilt versus the grace, and how does finding the right balance help you make better decisions? I know
Yeah.
I'm like asking you all these questions. I'm
I
so
know,
sorry,
girl.
but
You flip the script here. No, I'm kidding. But no, I think it's a good question because I think
hmm
anything we do with God, we have to
hmm
live in His grace because
okay,
we know that we are
that we
not
can't do it
perfect
on our
and we
own,
know that we
right?
can't do it on our own. We know that we're
hmm
constantly failing, but
hmm
the healing and the deliverance and all of that comes in that grace and understanding God, I can't do it. I'm weak here. And then
Yeah.
He somehow makes us strong. So it's
hmm
not so much about beating yourself up as much as it
hmm
is acknowledging the vulnerability, acknowledging
Mm.
and so instead
Okay.
of saying, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't, but it's if you tap into that I need you piece of
hmm
it rather than I can't measure up, that's two different
Right.
self-talk.
Oh, definitely.
I can't measure up pulls you away from
hmm
God because now
Right.
you're thinking to yourself, I don't even want to pray because I know I do. You know what I mean? Now you're moving away. But if you like,
Mm.
oh, I realize just how much I need you, it pulls you closer. So it's just
Okay.
about how you're viewing it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, because we're always just beating ourselves up. Like, I think, in any situation where maybe someone has been critical of me, I
Yeah.
probably have been way worse
Even
critical
more
of
critical.
myself in,
Exactly.
in those moments. But just being able to be transparent,
Yes.
as a community of women, like, hey, we
Yes.
are struggling, right? Like, you
Yes.
almost want to present with this level of perfection,
Yes.
but a lot of times when it comes to your health, like, you
Mm-hmm.
really can't hide it. Like, you can put the
Mm.
makeup on, you can put the
Yeah.
hair on,
Yeah.
but there's certain things that are presented that
Right.
represent,
Yeah.
your status from a health standpoint that,
Right.
you can't necessarily get around. And so, we feel the judgment from
Yeah.
other people. We feel the
Mm-hmm.
judgment, that whether it exists or not, right? A lot
Not
of
we
times it
we
might be
yeah.
us,
We
right?
yeah.
We feel that. And so
Yeah.
it does, make you feel like if you're not perfect, then why try? And
Yes.
so, so that's where that grace piece just really
Yeah.
comes in terms of just really being able to say, hey, you've got to try because you're worth the effort.
Yes. You're worth the effort, and you could do
hmm
it. And it's
Right.
also, you have to encourage yourself. You have to talk
hmm
what is, even if you don't see it, because I think a lot of
Yes.
times we do negatively
hmm
talk, but what we're doing is we're
hmm
talking ourselves out of something
Okay.
rather than affirming ourselves that, what, I can do this, I
hmm
am, it's about giving yourself the positive affirmations because that's going to move you to where you want to go,
Yeah,
so.
yeah, absolutely. And just even and I've done this before, so I know it
Hmm.
works, and then you can
Yeah.
stop. But just imagining yourself the way that you want to be,
Yes.
in your mind, like,
Yes.
like meditating on those things,
Yes.
when you go to bed at night, like, I'm going to this, I'm going to that, versus, where you are, but really just try to focus on where you're trying to be. I think that
Yes.
has helped me in some instances as well.
Yes. Yes. Awesome. Awesome. So guys, if you guys have any questions before we close out, we're just going to give you guys a couple minutes. I see a few of you guys on here. Um, but yeah, if you guys have any comments, any questions, anything just from what you've been hearing tonight, go ahead and pop it in the chat. We would love to have your feedback, just hear
Mhm.
where your head's at. Um, yeah. Just give them a couple minutes. But it was such a
Okay.
pleasure talking to you. You were
It's
so
so
fun to
nice
talk
to
with.
talk to
And
you.
yeah,
I have enjoyed the conversation. I know we're going to, set up some time for you all to also be a part of the Safe Food Project.
yes,
And so we'll get some time set up for that as well going forward,
yes.
as well as some of the heart-to-heart discussions that we
Hmm.
do as a part of Healthy Heart Nation. And
Yeah.
so if anyone wants to follow any of those discussions, we're on YouTube,
Mhm.
Healthy Heart Nation.
Yes.
And we do a heart-to-heart conversation for the most part every third Friday
Mm.
of each month. And so
Yes.
that is kind of our set schedule where we're being, we focus on either business, health, justice, or education. And then
Yes.
we bring those conversations for the community around those areas.
Awesome. Awesome. So you guys heard it here. Um, awesome. So yeah. All right. So I don't see any comments. So I guess we will close out, but thank you again for coming
Thank you
on.
for having me.
Definitely do another one, and we'll see you on other platforms.
Okay, sounds good. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Bye.
Bye.